Donn Felker. Today we're talking about some outsourcing do's and don'ts. A little bit about me. I've been developing and writing books and been an entrepreneur for about 11, 12 years now. I've ran 2 other companies. One was acquired. It was actually a clothing company got acquired, and then a couple other things as well. But you can see up here what I've kind of done. I've done some work for Groupon, Eventbrite, and created a couple other products. And on the left-hand side here are some of the companies I'm currently involved with. Agilevent is a consulting company that I currently run right now, and it's a small in-house shop, mainly Android, iOS, .NET, and some kind of Ruby work here and there, ranging from myself all the way up to 2 or 3 people, kind of depending on the workload. And then a couple other startups here. Conquer.com, which is the one that Katie just brought up, is a social gaming application. And we're actually working with a team of 5 guys out of Minnesota right now to get that off the ground in the next month or so. And there's a couple other things here I can talk about as well, but these are kind of some of the things that I've done if you're interested in these. So today's talk is going to be all about my experiences in outsourcing, and this could range from anything from Agilevent, anything to outsourcing, accounting, all the way to about our basic stuff, which we'll get into right now. I want to pull on the presentation. So what we're going to cover is my experience, the how, the why, and any questions at the end. There's not really going to be any sections of here's how and here's why and so forth. If you have questions, raise your hand in the middle of the presentation. Feel free to interrupt. The how and the why are just going to be kind of explained throughout the presentation. And if I miss anything or if you have any questions, they're off the wall. Feel free to ask. So pretty much what is outsourcing? And the first thing that people mostly think of when they think outsourcing is they think India. They think when you make a phone call to your telephone company or to a technical company to answer a question about a piece of hardware you have, you get someone in India who is talking to you and you have a hard time understanding because of the different dialect, and sometimes they don't know what you're talking about. Now that's not a problem because if they're in India, it's just a problem because of training. And the reason why I know this is I used to work for a couple call centers who had call centers in India, and the big problem was actually training and retention. And so a lot of times when people think, outsourcing, they think India. The other thing that people think of a lot of the time is outsourcing. They're going to build a product, you're going to send it off, and you're going to get manufactured. Most times this is going to occur in somewhere in a place like China, the big assembly line where you put pieces together. I used to work for Todd McFarlane at McFarlane Toys for 5 years, and we used to build all the action figures for different sports figures, for football, NFL, baseball, all that kind of stuff. And we actually went over to China, and it looked just like this. They were sitting there, and they were building little pieces, hand by hand, and it would just continue down the line. One person their only job would be is to paint the helmet line on maybe an action figure, and that's all they would do for 8 hours a day, 12 hours a day, until the next action figure came around, and then they would paint the line on the arm, and that's all they would do. And they were perfect at it. And so that's what a lot of people think of, either India or China. But usually it's always more than offshore. What I like people to think of is there's other types of outsourcing. This could range from landscaping to pool care to exterminators to car washes to even maybe graphic design. You're going to offshore or outsource yourself, maybe even onshore. So we'll talk about that a little bit more. But think of outsourcing as a little bit more than going to another country and having someone else do your work. Think of it as any type of work that you may or may not want to do, you can have someone else to do, and you can pay them. So the more commonly sought after outsourcing items are usually the accounting, maybe some software development, and kind of virtual assistants. These are the main 3 areas that I've encountered in my career, being software development and product development, that most people want to have help with. So how am I going to help with accounting? How am I going to help with development? How am I going to have a virtual assistant? The accounting one's pretty easy. You have an accountant. They kind of help you out that way. You're really outsourcing your accounting. If you have an accountant you pay that's in Scottsdale or maybe they're in Gilbert, you're dealing with the accounting, you're outsourcing your accounting. So that's kind of already taken care of. People don't think of this as outsourcing. They say, hey, I have an accountant, but you've actually outsourced that duty to someone else. So think of it that nature. We'll talk about development and virtual assistant as well shortly here. My experience in these types of things actually comes from a little story here. I used to be a consultant for a software company here in town. I'm actually wearing the shirts thanks to Tara. I used to work there 6 years ago, I believe. And I was driving to work one day. And I was listening to a podcast called Handsome Minutes. That guy, Handsome Minutes, right here, is Scott Hanselman. He now works for Microsoft. And he has a podcast that I listened to, and the reason I listened to it was he was a big person on productivity, how to get more time back into your life, how to make things easier for you. And he interviewed Tim Ferriss here in the middle. He's pointing at me. Tim Ferriss is the author of the book, The 4-Hour Workweek. Some people love the book, some people hate it. I personally love it. And the reason why I like Tim Ferriss' book, The 4-Hour Workweek, is because he does everything based upon data. He doesn't make any wild, off-the-wall assumptions saying this is how things should be or I think this is how it's going to be. He does experiments, and everything he does, he logs everything he does. And he has books and books and books. He's always carrying a notebook. He's always carrying a laptop. He's doing something. He's keeping track of everything. And then he analyzes that data to find patterns to see what works and what doesn't. A lot of the times what he finds is that things are not what they seem. And so Ferris actually brings up a good point. Is in his 4-Hour Workweek book, he wants you to make the number one connection that time is money. And that's kind of something we always know, time is money. But he really wants you to think about every hour that you have is worth a dollar amount. So he's always trying to make that correlation that time equals money. And so what he really wants you to do, and what I've done since reading that book, is place a dollar value on your time. Personally, I figure my time is worth $100 an hour. So if I'm going to do anything, it's going to have to cost me more than $100 for me to do it myself. So if it's going to cost me $200, but I can actually go ahead and do it in an hour for $100, so it's only going to cost me $100 of my time, I'm still saving $100 in that rate. But if it's only going to cost, if I can pay someone else to do the same task for $20, it's going to take them an hour, it's going to take me an hour, regardless of what it is, I'm going to save myself $80. So you can start thinking about it that way, you start thinking about things differently. So the number one thing that I started doing is thinking about the great places to start. I hate mowing my lawn. I absolutely despise it. I can't stand it at all. It's Phoenix, it's 120 degrees outside in August, and I do not want to be out mowing my lawn, especially after a monsoon. It's just miserable, and I'm out there for 3.5 hours. So if I look at that, it's 3.5 hours, $350. If I start looking at how much a landscape might cost me, it might cost me $50, maybe up to $100 a month. I'm mowing my lawn and do my yard work twice a month. I'm spending $600, $700. I figure, hey, you know what? If I can actually just work an extra hour or a couple hours at work, I can actually save myself $500 or $600 and get a quality of life improvement. So I'm going to outsource my landscaping. So that's the first thing I did. So that's my experience initially getting into outsourcing was just outsource landscaping. Second thing I didn't like was pool care. Wasn't a big hassle, but I really like it. The monsoon comes in, makes my pool all dirty. I got to get in there, I got to clean up the pool. I got to spend an hour and a half doing that. I got to go to Home Depot or Leslie's Pool Supply and spend all this money on pool supplies, and I got to maintain it, make sure it don't get wet. It's just a huge hassle that I didn't want to worry about. So I paid someone else $50 a month to come by and do that. Save myself a few $100s in my own time that way. Again, maybe work another hour or two or whatever, kind of build together. You can think about the same thing for exterminations, or even if you're going to go to a car wash, you don't want to wash your car anymore, you're tired of washing your car, you just want to save some time. You're going to a car wash, you're outsourcing your car wash. So think of anything that you're not doing as outsourcing. It's a great place to start an experiment. In my companies, the things that I've majorly needed help with have been accounting, development, virtual assistants, and graphic design. I have quite a large graphic design background, having worked for an illustrator here in town for 5+ years. But the problem is I'm not a graphic designer by trade. I'm a software developer. So I needed help in that area. I also needed help in accounting. I have no finance degree whatsoever, and I'm terrible at it. So I needed someone to help me manage my books. I needed a virtual assistant to kind of handle some other bookkeeping related tasks, as well as maybe some email management and some document management as well. And then development, because I'm always developing, I always have new ideas coming up, I would like someone to help me out with some development. And maybe I want to kind of offshore that or bring another resource on it and pay them and so forth. So those are the areas I needed help with. So that's what I ended up wanting to do. After I did my landscaping and I did the pool and I did extermination and everything else like that, I freed up my time. Now I wanted to free up my time from going online every day into QuickBooks and figuring out how much money do I need to save, or where do I need to reconcile this account, and what category is this going into. I realized after doing some accounting for a while, spending 5-6 hours on the weekend doing accounting, which was a complete and utter waste of time because I got 2 kids at home and I couldn't hang out with them. So I figured, you know what, let's see if I can get an accountant. So what I decided to do is find an accountant. Now I chose to go with an accountant that's local, and I'll talk about that in a second. I also needed a virtual assistant to kind of handle some other mundane tasks that relate to accounting. We'll talk about that. And then also needed some help with the development. So I have a lot of projects that come up and a lot of ideas that I want to try to test out, proof of concept to see if they're worth it. So I'll usually end up outsourcing my development. And so I found a developer who was actually based out of Armenia, looking for a really great price. And I actually got really lucky and did my research and did my homework and spent a little extra time making sure I found the right resource. And I'll talk about how to find the right resource when we get to the development section. But in the end, I ended up finding someone who has a PhD in genetic algorithms and is a professor at the University of Armenia. And I paid him $18 an hour. I just got lucky. This is one of those things you just need to continue looking for, and I'll show you how to do that. So the first thing that I wanted to do when I wanted to find an accountant is kind of just go down these simple steps, thinking that a referral is the best thing that you can do. If someone has an accountant here locally that you want to work with, go with a referral. It seems like everyone at least knows at least one. one accountant. So talk to your friends, talk to your friends who might have businesses, or someone who might work for a small business. Hey, what accountant do you guys use? Do you guys have one on staff? If not, get their information, contact them. And what I'm usually going to say here is go with QuickBooks. Some people like using FreshBooks or some of the new up-and-coming startups that are out there. And while I really like to support startups in the finance space, it's hard for me to leave QuickBooks. And the reason for that is I can go to any accountant out there and they know QuickBooks. Right off the gate, I said, you know QuickBooks? Yes, we got you covered. So I don't have to go teach them something new. I'm trying to make my life easier. So if I can use a tool to do that, I'm going to use QuickBooks. I'm going to use QuickBooks Online. So initially, if you have, maybe you're starting up a new company, you can have a couple of invoices with one or two clients for free, I believe is what it is. And then as soon as you get above the basic account, you're going to start getting charged like $19.95 a month. I bumped it up a couple of versions where I have an accountant user, so he logs as an accountant, and I know when my accountant logs in, there's a full audit log because of compliance, because of the whole Enron thing. So there's a full activity log, I can see what changed, history, and so forth. Create a couple of different user accounts so they can log in. Now if you can't find anyone, the best thing to do is just Google. If you're in Phoenix, Scottsdale, whatever, say Phoenix QuickBooks accountant. You're going to find about 20 different links. Get in there and just start calling and see which one you're going to like the best. Usually they're all pretty competent. Accounting's pretty black and white practice, and you can pretty much see what's going on at that level. So that's what I did, and the reason why I chose an accountant that's local is because I wanted to be able to meet with the person. So the thing is having met with them, I can actually interact with them, see what kind of person they are, see if they're, I get the right gut feeling if this is the kind of person I want to go to, working with my money, working with my company's money, and getting the right financial advice or direction in that area. The nice thing is, since I'm using QuickBooks Online, I've only ever, in my entire career, met my accountant once face-to-face. I have never seen him again. That was years ago. So now it's just completely through email, it's through phone, and he has an account, a QuickBooks login that he saves, and then he logs into his online version of QuickBooks, and he does all of his stuff right there. And then all of a sudden he'll send me an email saying, hey, your taxes are done, I'll be emailing you or mailing you the forms, just sign where I tell you to sign them, and then you're done. So that's one of the great things is now I've eliminated the need to constantly go to my accountant and talk to my accountant. I can't tell you how many businesses that I know of or business entrepreneurs or anything have to go meet with their accountant all the time to figure things out. I went there once, bought all my paperwork, set it up, and that was it. Another good thing you want to use is you're going to have email, phone, scanner, and a mobile with camera. A lot of people say, hey, I need to take documents and I need to email this, scan them and send them there. For the past year and a half, I've been conducting a personal experiment where I do not use a scanner. If you need a document from me, I will take a picture of it with my phone and I will email it to you. I have never been denied. Apple has even approved my Apple developer agreement, which I had to sign manually in the tax forms. I took a picture of them and emailed it back to Apple, and they even accepted it. So these are a lot of the things you can think of. I don't have a scanner. You don't need a scanner. Just get under some bright light. Take a picture of it. Make sure you get a clean picture. Zoom in on it. Make sure the text is legible. If it's not, whatever. If you need to sign something, scan your signature. Save your signature somewhere in a secure place that no one else is going to know where you have access to it. And use a photo editing program that's free out there. Maybe GIMP is a free open source tool. If you have Photoshop or Paint.net or anything like that, take it. Take a picture of the document you need. Overlay your signature. Drop it where it needs to be. Type in the dates. Fill out the rest of it on the computer. And they can email it in. No longer do you need a fax. I've eliminated 90% of my faxes that way. The only time I ever need to fax is if it's usually with the city or the government. And you can usually get around that at the same time by contacting them and saying, hey, do you have an email address? I can just email this document to you. I have a PDF or I have a JPEG or whatever. So yeah, you can do that. So that's one great thing about having everything online is I can actually have the accountant only have been met with them face to face. So again, how much do they cost? I go local accountant, so it kind of it's the standard rates. So whatever the rates are, you're going to have to talk to the accountant to see what they are. There's no real special deals you're going to get cut. You are just outsourcing the task itself. So you want to kind of trust someone with your accounting, of course. So you're going to kind of pay for that one. So the next thing we'll talk about is a little virtual assistant. So the basic thing is, what does a virtual assistant do? For those who aren't familiar with a virtual assistant, it's an assistant similar to like an administrative assistant. It's not at your office. They might do basic bookkeeping. They might do a research in a known domain. And the reason why known domain is highlighted or underlined here is because you don't want someone with a medical background researching Ruby on Rails routing methods. They are having no idea what they're going to look for. If you have someone who maybe has a background in medical and you are in the medical field and you need someone to do some research on some clinical trials, that's the perfect person you want to do. So you need to know your virtual assistant's known domain. If they are an accounting person, they're going to only be able to do research in accounting. You're not going to be able to really trust their research otherwise. They may give you some links, but it could be more fluff than it is anything else. So They can do research in a known domain. They can do email management, basically meaning you can give them passwords to your email if you feel safe enough, and they can reply to their email on behalf of you. A lot of people are concerned about the bookkeeping and the email management, maybe the calendar management of managing your calendar and privacy and so forth. Well, the companies that I usually work with, which are out of India, they are actually work with thousands of companies and have agreements stating that your information is going to remain private and so forth. You can do reviews on them, and I'll show you the links where you can find these people. And they have teams of other individuals in which you can help offload some of this email management, bookkeeping, and so forth. For myself, what I ended up doing was finding a virtual assistant that was just a simple bookkeeper. And the bookkeeper, for me, just does some account reconciliation. So the best way you can find a virtual assistant is learn from others, such as Tim Ferriss here, or anyone else who has experience. If you ever want to email me, say, hey, where did you find this person? I have a question. Feel free to email me. I'll give you a card afterwards. And again, QuickBooks is easy. So if you're going to use anything in regards to bookkeeping and you need your personal or virtual assistant to have access to it, use QuickBooks. They're going to be able to get into the system remotely. You're never going to have to meet with them. You can create an ID that has lockdown permissions. They only have read permissions. They can only adjust things in the check register. They can only do this. QuickBooks Online has a permissions matrix. It's pretty complex, and you can lock an account ID down. And so I've done that to create a virtual assistant login. Give them the login. Now when they log in, it automatically goes and it says this person's logged in, what they've changed. I can keep record of what they've changed. The key thing here is if you own your own company, create an email address that says like virtualassistant@yourcompany.com. That's what you're going to sign up with. You're going to sign up under that account, and you're just going to give them, here's the username, here's the password. You don't want them to sign up with their email address and their password, because if you ever want to change someone, you want to be agile about it. If someone's not performing, you want to get rid of them, because someone else is doing something better. We can do the job better. And to do that, you would have to create a new account if they sign up with their own account. By using your own account, virtualassistant@yourcompany.com, you go in there, change the password, email the username and password to that guy, say, here you go. Now you kind of have just one kind of linear graph of a virtual assistant. Maybe make a note of when you made the switch, so if you need to know what happened before a date or after a date. But that's helped me when I've had to change virtual assistants before. So finding a virtual assistant, there's a couple of them out there. Actually, there's tons of them ever since the 4-Hour Workweek book came out. The first one is Brickwork India. This is the one I use. This is these guys are out of India. It's a corporation out there, and they have a bunch of divisions. I mean, the website isn't that impressive looking, but they do have a bunch of divisions ranging from software development to accounting to research and development to helping you write a paper, helping you write grants, helping you do all kinds of stuff. So when you first sign up for one of these companies, they're going to ask you what you want. For me, I signed up and say, hey, I want some help with some accounting. I need some account reconciliation. I need you to categorize transactions. I need to do a few other things in my QuickBooks for me that I just find mundane and really boring. I don't want to do anymore. It takes too much time. And so at that point, what they did is they come back and they offer you a quote. And I'll tell you what the quote is here in a second. Your man in India is also another one. You can also look around and say, a virtual assistant. You're going to find a lot of them that are local. You can look on Craigslist. You find VAs that are Craigslist. Someone here in Chandler you can actually meet with, have coffee with. They work out of their house. They have, fast internet connection from Cox, and they handle 2 or 3 other people as well. So you can have people who are local. Local people are going to be more expensive, of course, but that's always an option if you feel like you want to stay local. Also think about friends with F1 and H1 visas. A lot of those times those people will work here for a few years or go to college here for a few years, and then they'll return back to India. And they have family at home, and they have friends at home, or maybe they even go back and are looking for a job, because here making $100 an hour is equivalent to making, $10, $12, $14, $20 an hour there. So you can get that same person with the same knowledge if they move back for much cheaper, and they're willing to accept that a lot of the time because they can't find a job that's going to pay them the same amount. You've already built that connection. So keep those friends in mind. If you meet them at work, hey, you have anyone that does any virtual assistant stuff at home, or you have any friends or colleagues and so forth. They have great connections. A couple other tips for finding a good VA out there. You need to be clear and specific in your task. I mean, very specific. You need to outline down to the time. Please research, or please make sure you categorize all the transactions in the QuickBooks account that are uncategorized at this time. If you spend if you cannot understand, or you're trying to decide what item should be categorized as, if you spend more than 2 minutes trying to decide, please put that to the side and ask me. That gives them at the time boxes everything they do. If you do not time box them, they'll leave it wide open and they'll just continue working to fulfill their hours. I personally have Right now, there's 20 hours allocated, and I just purchased a 20-hour block, and when they run out, I repurchase it. So I time box them, keep it very short, and then they'll email me an Excel spreadsheet and say, here, I don't know how to categorize these, I don't know what these mean, and I can kind of hop in there real quick and take a look and see what each one of these should be categorized as. Specify the skills required. So what do you need to do? You need to have some accounting, you need to understand basic software engineering, you need to understand research, you need to understand medical terms, you need to do understand medical billing, whatever your company might do, make sure you specify the skills that are required to do the job. If you don't, they're just going to throw you a random virtual assistant. The more specific you are, the more filtered and the more narrow, and the best results you're going to get for the VA. What happens at these VA companies is it starts at the director, and it kind of funnels down into sub-directors and the sub-managers, and gets down finally into small teams of 5 to 7 people in that area. And when it gets to those managers, it's been filtered already enough that they know who's the best person to give it to. One thing you want to do, finding VAs initially can kind of be rather expensive for the first time if you're not sure what you're doing. What I recommend doing is actually finding 3 to 5 VAs you kind of like, maybe talk to them on email, maybe on the phone even. They'll stay up late or get up early or vice versa. You can kind of work out a schedule to talk to them or just do it through email. Personally, I've never spoken to my VA over the phone, because she's been all through email. But you can find 3 to 5 VAs, and what you'll do at that time is then give them a task. And give them all, choose 3 of them. I said 3 here, choose 3 of them, and give them the same job. And then at that point, they're all going to come back with different results. Everyone's going to do everything differently. And at that point, you can evaluate how the people did their jobs. And at that point, decide who's the best and award that person the recurring work. Now, it's going to be having initial upfront costs a little bit higher, but in the end, you're going to be happier with what you've had. And I know a lot of people who go down this route and find it the best. Because if you hop in, you spend a lot of time with one person, nurturing that person along, you're going to end up realizing down the road that, hey, this is not the right fit. All right, I've wasted a month, and now I need to go back and do it again. You can kind of get rid of that initially, kind of by providing a test. Like, here's the first test I need you to do. Here's the first task I need you to complete. As soon as they complete that task, you can decide if you want to continue on with them. So how much does a VA normally cost? It does vary depending on job. Software development is going to be more expensive than basic email management. Then accounting is going to be more expensive than email management. So it depends on what you're doing. So, for example, my VA performs just basic bookkeeping tasks of just transactions, account categorizations, and so forth. So I have about 400 transactions a month, and that's in my bank account for my business that need to be categorized as meals and entertainment, expenses, software, subscriptions and dues, all these different types of things. And I have to go in there and manually click them if it's not automatically getting them. And a lot of times if I go to the new store, I won't know how to categorize them. So I'll need to split it out as, hey, half of this is expense, half of this is personal, and so forth. And so what happens is, I got a VA that performs this type of stuff. So their price for 20 hours is $250, and that equates out to $12.50. I renew this about once every 3 months. So when you need to estimate the cost of the total VA, this is the equation that I usually use, and it's pretty close to right on. You're going to take the total cost of the VA for the time that you need them, times it by 30%, and add those 2 numbers together. So it's total price plus 30% is your total investment that you're going to spend on a virtual assistant. So if it's $250 per quarter, you have 4 quarters, it's $1,000 per year to have my virtual assistant. I've taken 30% extra, and then I'm going to add that in, so it's $1,300 per year. So what's the 30%? The 30% is management. That's your management. You're going to have to correct them on what they're doing, redirect them. They're going to go off on the wrong path sometimes or get something wrong. You need to hop back in there and fix it. So there's about 30% of my time that they may spend, I'm going to hop back in there and fix things or get them on the right direction. So for $1,300 a year, I have someone right now managing my QuickBooks account, making sure it's clean, making sure everything is legit. All those guys are QuickBooks certified actually over there, which is kind of nice. They're very familiar with it. Again, taking the lowest common denominator of QuickBooks and letting them run with it. So if I take, again, the $100 an hour scenario of how much my time might be worth to me, that's 13 hours. I just paid 13 hours for a year's worth of work for me, for someone else to manage that stuff. So we have 20, 40, 60, 80 hours for someone to manage this stuff. Right now, again, I'm only having someone about every 3 months, I'm renewing the contract. So he's spending maybe a few hours every couple of weeks, just kind of going in there and recategorizing it. Every month he emails me. He says, hey, I need a new PDF from your bank statement so I can reconcile. I don't give him access to my bank. I'm not comfortable on that level yet. Some people are, they'll give them access to the bank and the QuickBooks. I'm just not comfortable. So what you can do is get the PDF from your bank. I have US Bank. get the PDF and send the PDF to the VA. And at that point, they can look at the PDF and they can look at QuickBooks and line things up all the way down the line. And what you'll do at that point is then remove yourself from the security risk of having someone access to your US bank account. Again, they still have access to your financials, but again, it's just QuickBooks. It's just managing your books at that time. So right now, I want to talk about the outsourcing development of software. So this is probably going to be the most difficult one you're going to have of all, and mainly because there's so many different factors. It's such a it's a task that's very intensive for any developer knows this. You may know one niche area, but the other 80% you have no idea about at all. So it's very, very painful. And if you have multiple technologies you're trying to work with, it can be even a bigger headache. While there may be a developer offshore or even onshore that knows .NET, but you also need them to know iOS for iPhone development, the chances of that coming together is probably pretty slim. You may know an iOS guy, you may know Ruby on Rails, but maybe you need to have him know a different type of language. Building all those things together can be a headache. So sometimes you actually have to have multiple offshore developers working together. At that point in time, then you become the manager of bringing that all together. There are shops out there that will handle that for you. They'll take the development of, we'll build your iPhone app, we'll build your Android app, and we'll build your server backend infrastructure. Now, at that point in time, things can kind of get a little hairy. You don't really know what kind of product you're going to get. You're going to spend most of your time developing, a huge waterfall document saying, here's everything you need to do. And then they give you something you usually don't want. So what I usually do is I'll take, for development of software, I'll find someone that I want to do kind of some simple work, and I'll kind of just push simple work off to them. Something that's not mission critical. So and the key thing here is, if you know of a great resource and you find them, do not let them go. Keep them busy. At least keep them on board for a couple of hours, just so you can always get a hold of them when you need them and pull them back in for a more full-time type status. So finding software development talent, if you want to go with onshore and it's within your budget, then do it. There's a couple of options for onshore. There's body shops around the house that provide it. There's other consulting firms that you can work with that will do it. You'll see a lot of companies here in town will work with consulting firms like Sapera, Sageti, and where I was from before in Minneapolis, they worked with Magenic. Magenic actually had something called onshore. Actually, Lakeshore is what they had. They had a Minnesota's land of 10,000 lakes. They had a development shop which was all college grads that were very good college grads. About 40 people that sat in their building, and you could actually pretty much rent them. Say, hey, we need 5 developers. Here's access to our code. Here's what we need them to do. And so you'd get them for a much cheaper price than you would like a full-time consultant that's $150 an hour. You get them for like $65 an hour. Again, a lot more expensive than you're going to encounter offshore. If you can't do onshore, it's best to use referrals first. And the reason is if you get a referral, the hard work has been done for you already. Someone's already kind of vetted them. You know your friend, you know your coworker. They say, hey, this guy's great. Trust me, he knows exactly what he's doing in this given area. Go with him. They've done the hard work. You can kind of trust your friend's opinion and go with that first if you'd like to. Other options are odesk.com, elance.com, a whole bunch of options out there, as well as also finding maybe a recruiter that's local, that you may want to find someone, hey, I'm looking for a specific niche person that handles X, Y, and Z. Maybe you can't find someone on these sites to do this. You might have to go back to a recruiter to help you find things. Big thing here is if you're going to find a developer is test each developer, even if they're on a team. Sometimes you're going to get companies that say, hey, we have a team of 20 developers. We can handle it. Trust us. We'll get it done. Find the developer. Ask for the developer's email address. Ask for their name. Say, hey, I want to talk to them first. Get past that initial blocker that's not letting you have access to the team. Get a hold of those couple of people that you want to talk to if you're hiring one of them, and then give them a test. There's a couple of example tests here. Test number 2 is actually based off of Integram's initial test that they had for hiring Ruby on Rails developers, which was go and pull some commits off of a Git branch and print it to the screen and then recommit it back to Git. What these tests do are a lot of things. They prove, A, that the person can follow directions. That's the key right there, is that they are listening to you, they're following directions. B, that they want the work. And C, that they can do the work. The problem is that you're going to have a lot of these places where people don't want to work for free. So the example test 2, I tried this one for a while. I had no leads, no bites on it whatsoever. It was a modification using Android saying, hey, go pull some commits from some source repository, put them in this list, and then push them back up with your name on it. So that proved that they know how to use source control, proved they know how to code Android, proved that they know how to use different HTTP things, all kinds of different stuff, and follow directions. No one did it. The reason being, If you really know what you're doing and you kind of had to do some research, it could take you an hour or two. It could take you a couple hours just to get it done. So I rewrote the test. I did it myself. And then what I did is I put a couple of bugs in it that would break. So as soon as you start up, it would blow up. And I know what's wrong with it. And I put them in specific locations knowing that they can be fixed very easily. And I also put them in a specific location saying, hey, these are the things that are blocking. How do you fix them? And so forth. The number test number 1, I got over 20 responses to. And what ends up happening is 20 different implementations of the same problem. They all work. Some of them were terrible, and some of them were phenomenal. The guy that I ended up choosing was from Armenia. Actually did it better than I originally implemented. So it's one of those things where the test paid off because I said, that's the guy. As soon as I saw the code, and if you're not a developer, you'll need someone who, if you're offshore in development, you'll need someone to actually look at the code and say, hey, can you vet this? Does this look good? Does it look legit? Here's the original problem, or so forth. So make sure you're going to want to keep, the key thing here with the testing is it's going to weed out the incompetent very fast. You're going to say, you're going to get 100 people if you go to ods.com saying, I can do the task, I can do it, I can do it, I want to do your work. Reply back to them and say, all right, great. Here's a 20-minute task. You should be able to get done in under 20 minutes. And you know this, maybe you're even padding at 10 minutes. Go ahead and send this in and send the code back following these directions. If you say, hey, go put it up on Dropbox, or go put it up on some shared files, or transferbigfiles.com, put it up there. You're going to have people emailing you files. You're going to have guys sending you direct code right in the email. And then probably 5–10% of them are actually going to do what you say. And then you just kind of ignore the rest of them, look at those 5 or 10% to see if they'll make any difference. If they do, continue on. It's going to weed out the incompetent real fast. So tips for building a test. This was the big one here. They must be able to complete it under 20 minutes. 20 minutes. If it's going to take 20 minutes, most people aren't going to do it at all. They're just going to look at it and be like, I don't even know. There's a podcast called Tech Zing, which is all about startups and software startups. One of the guys in there, Justin Vincent, and him and I were doing a kind of a competition to see how our outsourcing went. We kind of started at the same time. He did PHP, mine was for Android. He actually had his task. For him, he's an excellent developer. It was a 10-minute task. But when I looked at it, he's expert with JavaScript and jQuery and all this kind of stuff. He was trying to do the DOM manipulation. I looked at it, well, it's going to be an hour, hour and a half task maybe. Other people were looking at it thinking 4 or 5 hours. They were back, yeah, I spent 5 hours in this. He only had 2 or 3 respondents. He couldn't figure out why he was getting them back. So to him, it was realistic, but he had to think back out of it a little bit. Make it more realistic to someone who has no domain knowledge. Like, here's just some basic things. If you know these basic things, I know I can work with you. So keep it under 20 minutes. Make it realistic. You're not going to want someone to say, hey, I want you to rebuild a fake little Twitter. Rebuild Twitter a little bit. Make it. You'll have to make it nice and pretty, but hey, make sure it's got the same functionality. No one's going to do that. But if all of a sudden you have, you want to send them a web page that has some JavaScript errors in it, hey, there's some errors on here. Can you send it back to be fixed? People are more apt to fix something that's already broken because they like to hop in there and figure out the problem, figure out the puzzle, see what the problem is. So it's a good thing to do is keep it realistic under 20 minutes. And the big thing is here, once you find a great resource, just keep them. Like I said, keep them on, you don't have to keep them on a retainer or professional retainer, but keep them going for a few hours. My Armenian resource right now, I really don't have any work for it right now, but I have a couple side projects I want to do. So if I say, hey, 5 hours a week, I want you to work on this little thing over here. And what that does, it allows me to kind of keep engaged, keep contact back and forth so I can keep him on hand. The same thing with the regular VAs, like your accountant VA, the guy who manages your email, and so forth. You want to keep contact with them, keep them in the loop, because that resource will eventually be taken up full time because they're so good. Someone's going to find it and they're going to allocate all their time. You're not going to be able to get anything. So always keep a handle on some level of time with them so you can always have a hook back into them if you're not using them right away. Big thing to know about any type of outsourcing at all. The first task you give someone should never be mission critical. I'd say even the first 10 tasks you give them should never be mission critical. If this does not get done, then this is going to fail and you're going to be on the line for it. You don't ever want that. You want to give them a task that's easy, mediocre. You can build that relationship, build that communication between yourselves. So always give them something that's a little bit easier, a little funner for them to work with maybe even, but nothing that's ever mission critical. And so how much is the big one here? How much does the outsourcing software cost? I hate to say this, but it's a classic it depends kind of answer. If you're onshore, a lot more expensive. If you're lakeshore, like the small development shops in Minneapolis, it's going to be a little bit less. If you're offshore, it's going to be a lot less. It depends on the technology you're using. If you want to write COBOL, you might find a COBOL programmer in India that's really cheap, or he might be really expensive because he's the only one. Or if you're going to be using something like Android or iOS, that's going to be higher enough. There's really hot technology. If you want to use something like Ruby on Rails, or even better, even PHP, you get PHP developers for like $5 to $8 an hour in India. Quality varies again. You need to test to find the right ones, but I've heard people that have PHP developers for $8 an hour and just make a killing out there and have built products on it. The podcast I spoke about, Texting, actually speaks about one of them by a guy named bidsketch.com. Was all outsourced. And the guy makes a living off of it right now. It's a small little 1 or 2 person startup. But the entire app itself was just designed in, I believe it was one of the mock-up programs, Balsamic, and then it was designed and coded in PHP. So again, it depends the quality, the timeline, how fast, how soon you want things done, how big is the team, is it? It's going to be a proof of concept. So proof of concept code, is throwaway code, as we let developers should know by now. Throw it away, or is it a final product that should be shipped out? So what's the quality of code? What's the timeline? What are all these things built in? And the technology that we're being used. My cost personally, I've done right now over 6 Android, it says 6 here, but I've done over 6 Android projects using the same outsourcer in Armenia. All of them use HTTP communication, databases, all kinds of different stuff, storing things in the cloud. The thing is, I always have them initially do is I say no graphic design. Do not design it, do not do anything. I'm going to send you some real ugly mock-ups, make it look like that with the built-in controls. I'll then take it and then send it off to someone else who can do design once the functionality is there. So at this point in time, I'm paying $18.36 an hour for an Armenian resource, which if you take that same resource here in the States, you're looking around, with his aptitude level, you're looking around $100 an hour at least for the Android developer that he is. So it's a key thing to keep in mind. So the total cost right now this year, he's worked 136 hours for me. Taking the same formula we had before, that's about $2,500 roughly, a little under. If you times that by 30% here, you're going to see that I spent about $750 in management costs, but my total investment right now is $3,250 for this Android developer. He's got actually 3 products right now that one of them is live on the Android market. And $3,250 total, and if that was in an onshore resource at $100 an hour, we're talking $17,000, $17,680. So saving a little over, 13 grand here at this point in time, going with the offshore resource. So some general tips for outsourcing here. Cut the fat early. What I mean by this is, if someone doesn't perform, get rid of them. I used to do a lot of affiliate marketing back in the day with AdWords and so forth with some different marketing companies. And what we did is, immediately if the AdWord wasn't performing, and things have changed since then, of course, is just get rid of the AdWord. We got rid of the marketing campaign. We get rid of it and move on to the next one. And we always said cut the fat early, and that's what we did. If it's not working, it's just excess. Just get rid of it fast, get rid of it early, and move on to the next person. Some people say, hey, well, it's a little rude if someone's not performing within 2 weeks, then you should give them a shot. If this is a business for you, or this is what you're doing, then you need to move forward. You don't need to stand there and stagnate. Get rid of the non-performers and get someone there who's going to do the work right and do it correctly, and then get them out. Be very specific in your tasks, all the way down to time boxing your time. I always say time box everything. So if you're going to spend, if you want the user to spend, the virtual assistant or whoever's working for you to only spend 2 hours on this, so you're thinking, monetary cost, I only want you to spend $50 on this task. Do not spend more than 2 hours on this task. Get as far as you can, get done, and then report back to me and let me know where you're at. At that point, you can reassess, hey, should we move forward, should I not move forward? You can kind of assess your costs and so forth. And when you're specific in those tasks, it kind of outlines a direct path for them. If it's very vague, like say, hey, I want you to write an Android app that's kind of like Twitter. Okay, there's a world wide open at that point. So you want to be very specific and focused, giving them mock-ups, giving everything. So that's kind of built into 30% that you need to add on there is that management of kind of building the documentation, building either you need to communicate with them. And ask for confirmation that they understand. This is very important. At the end of every email that I send to any of my outsourcers, I say, please reply to me in your own words, specifying the task that I would like you to do. What that tells them to do is that I make sure, A, that they got it, and B, that they're sending it back, and I can read back in their own words, and I'll know, because half the time it's broken English, that it's what I'm expecting them to do. And at that point forward, if it's good, then I'll reply back saying, okay, it looks good, go ahead and start on the task and let me know when you're completed. I would like to have it done before Thursday or whatever date it might be. If you need something done tomorrow, you need to ask your outsourcers, hey, do you have time today to get this done before tomorrow at 4 p.m. Pacific Standard Time? You know, that's one of the things that you need to ask with a lot of outsourcers, is sometimes they're working on 10 different projects at once and they might have deadlines all tomorrow. So ask them if it's available or not. So, you know, they have jobs too. So that's something to keep in mind. And the biggest thing here is, you know, if you're not happy, just find another one. And some people don't prefer to go offshore to find a developer or a virtual assistant or a bookkeeper or anything like that. If you want to go onshore, go onshore if you want. Great place to look for people who are virtual assistants, and don't call them virtual assistants, or even help. Just go to the Craigslist gigs. You'll see people who say, hey, I have a, or you post on Craigslist, hey, I'm looking for someone to help me with some bookkeeping for 5 hours a week. You know, anyone out there. You might find a guy who's a staff accountant at some big accounting firm saying, hey, yeah, I'll do it for $20 an hour just to make some side money. You never know what you can find. I believe it was Kevin Rose who found the original developer of Dig on Craigslist, if I'm not mistaken. So you can find all kinds of stuff on it. So go onshore if you prefer. And in the end, you're just going to do this because you want to make your life easier. So at the end of the day, ask yourself what you're doing right now. Does it make your life easier? Does it make your business life easier? Does it make your business run smoother? Are you saving money? So at the end of the day, that's every question that I ask myself anytime I'm doing outsourcing. So does it make your life easier? Does anyone have any questions? Yes?
How do you make sure that your resource doesn't run away with your idea or with your client?
That's a good idea. That's good. Good question. So for those in here, how do you make sure that how do you make sure that someone doesn't run away with your idea or your IP or anything like that? That's a big question that's been talked about a lot, and a lot of the times what people end up doing is they won't actually go and use outsourcing until they already have some product marketing behind what they're doing, so they already have some leeway to get it running. If they're the first to market, some people don't even want to use outsourcing. I know a lot of people who will get the initial product off the ground, then use outsourcing, because by the time you've already been up and running, you've already have some steam and some momentum behind your business. And it's sure someone can steal the stuff if they're going to, but you're already ahead in the market, and someone might try to copy what you're doing, and they may succeed in copying it, but you already have enough leeway where you're already ahead of them in regards to the market. So, but it is a valid concern. So there is no exact way saying you can't take this. If you work with the firm instead of just somebody off the road, you're actually going to be much more protected, because each employee is bound to an agreement internally. They actually send you the agreement saying, here's the agreement that we are bound to you with, saying we're not going to take your code, we're not going to do X, Y, and Z, with everything. Yes.
What countries have you worked with, and have you noticed a pattern in terms of like quality and output by countries?
Countries I've worked with have been Philippines, China, Indonesia, India, Armenia, Romania, UK, US. Of those ones, I think that's it, off the top of my head. The best, mainly I use them for development. And so when I'm using development, I've usually found the best resources from my own personal experience to be in Armenia or Romania. I don't know why that is. I've also found, actually worked in Brazil and found one good one in Brazil too. So Armenia and Romania are usually my first choices when I'm kind of looking out there. If I see someone I'm just going down the list of Odessa, and I need someone has this task or can do this, it says, hey, Romania or Armenia, I'll kind of bookmark them, and then I'll contact them as my highest list, just because that's kind of been my success rate. There's nothing other than that, really. If it's bookkeeping or a really black and white general type task, at that point, I'm not going to go anywhere, really, because it's kind of a regulated thing. Here's how you do it. There is no, maybe or not so maybe stuff. In that case, I've always just kind of gone to India for those types of things.
So did you find your Armenian PhD on Odessa?
I did find him on Odessa. So it was
What's his ID?
That's one thing. Yeah, you gotta be careful if you're sharing your. The funny thing is you bring it up. You do some recruiting. He's actually been offered 3 jobs from Microsoft and 2 from Google, and declined every one of them because he doesn't want to move.
Yeah. I
actually talked to him about this. Like, yeah, I've been offered a couple jobs from Google. They offered me one 3 months ago. I was like, wow, okay, I got lucky. But yeah, you have to make sure if you have a resource and you want to share that resource, make sure that you're okay with them possibly walking away if you're going to give away their usernames or their information or anything like that.
And has he done? Did you say he's done complete product for you?
Yeah, he's good. Well, complete product in the sense of where I need him to do it. So he may have to roll the code and the functionality is all there, but it's absolutely ugly as all heck. I'll take it and then I'll go get the graphics from another graphic designer, and then I'll bring it together. I'll send him the graphic, say, hey, for this button, you use this graphic, and kind of do that. But yeah, he's built 2 that are complete. He's still working on 3 or 4 right now.
Yeah, that's a gem.
Yes, I got very lucky. So I've had other ones and had to get rid of them and kept cycling through. I've done this a few times now, and the first time I did it, I got very, very frustrated because I didn't know any of this stuff. And the big thing is having that test, which has really set everything apart for development, at least, is having that test. For bookkeeping, what I did is just kind of hopped in. I said, hey, I expect you to have this done by Thursday. And I hopped in and looked at my bookkeeping books, looked at his activity log, see if he logged in, see what he did, and saw all my things that didn't categorize properly. He sends me an email saying, hey, here's all the things I don't know how to categorize in a big Excel spreadsheet. Here's how much time I left. Here's where I spent my time. Okay, great. This is perfect. Yes?
What's been your experience in handing off a project from one outsourcer to another? Have you run into any glitches? You know, somebody was doing something that's really specialized, and all of a sudden,
that has all kinds of problems for me personally that I've ran into. And one was actually a telecom project for a large retailer where we had development taking place in one shop in Bangalore, and then we moved to a different shop in Bangalore. And there was just complete confusion because they didn't understand the project. They didn't, it took us a long time to get them ramped up, get that business domain knowledge transferred over, and then to have their development team and their business analysts kind of get in there and understand the roots of what's going on. And so there was about a 3 to 6 month period of a shift in the lag. In the end, it ended up working out. It was a better company, but there was quite a big lag initially to get moved over.
are you doing anything different today to sort of safeguard against that or make the a potential transition smoother?
I make sure that I only give my outsourcers tasks that I find that can be done by probably most outsourcing companies. I'm not going to outsource any kind of crazy product development where I'm going to be using fucking boards and I need to solder this kind of stuff together. Not any of that. If I need you to develop this software website or I need to develop this WordPress site that looks like X, Y, Z, I'll push that out there. It's not going to be anything that's really super crazy. If I want to do something that's really intensive or has a lot of thought behind it, I'll actually use a company. I'll use someone probably gangplank here to do something like that, or someone local that I may know, because then I can actually meet with them. It's more face-to-face stuff. But no, I don't really have anything other than making sure I'm only giving them certain tasks that I know are not mission critical. Yes?
Through what site again did you find your professor?
Odesk. So it's odesk.com. So yeah, just go on there and just kind of search for what you're looking for, and I would have never noticed it. You had a picture of him looking through like a mirrored box, and so he had like 8 faces on there, and I was like, oh, okay, his reviews look great. I was like, well, let's try this guy. And he did the test great, and I ended up Googling his name 2 weeks later, and I'm like, sending me an instant message, is this you? Oh yeah, that's me. On the university website and everything.
Do you recommend anything aside from paying them more than their rate in terms of retention tactics? Is there any
challenge them?
Yeah.
Yeah. Like the guy I work with, he says he's like, I love challenge them and be respectful to me. That's like, you have to be as a business, you have to be a businessman still and kind of be stern within like I expect X, Y, and Z. If you don't do it, kind of here's the consequence. But also challenge them and be respectful and say, wow, that's great, thank you, I really appreciate that. They really appreciate the kudos, they really appreciate, thanks a lot, it's nice, appreciate that. Or you could also bump up their pay after you're doing something like that to retain them. Personally, I just respect them, and I always give them something that's a little bit challenging than the time before. I kind of keep building on that. And I'm not to the point where it's mission critical or anything that's wild and crazy. But keep building on the last task, right? I knew you did that well. All right, now we're going to push the boundary a little bit. Say, hey, I want you to do this. Can you do that? Yeah, I can do that. And then sometimes I'll even send them some links. Say, here's what I'm looking like. I want this to kind of act like this, to look like this. And they kind of like that, and so they just keep moving forward.
Other questions?
Questions, Laurel? If you guys want my contact information, just let me know. I'll give you a card or something. So I'll be sitting right back here.
Can we get this presentation?
Yep, I'll put it up on slideshare.net, and I think it's slideshare.net. I'll put up a link on my blog too, so it's blog.donnfelker.com, and I'll give you guys some cards if you're interested. You can download the slide presentation if you like.
Thank you, Donn.
Thanks.